North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray.
Well, hey, man.
Self-care. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
It's 2025, the year of our Lord. And how are you taking care of you? How's Quinn taking care of Quinn?
Oh, man. So I have the luxury of having the two cutest little girls.
You do, man. Your kids are adorable.
And they are now getting to the age of wanting to play spa. And
oh, my gosh.
So I get to put my feet in Epsom salt baths.
Nice.
And
they
let them
pamper you.
Oh, they do. And they rub the feet. They paint my toes. Right now I have one foot, my left foot has orange toenail polish, and my right foot has red toenail polish on it.
That's excellent. That's great. That's all the self-care you need. Yes. That's fantastic. I love that. I love that. I was just going to brag real quick. So I recently discovered that here in Alamance County at ACC, we have the community college, and they have a cosmetology program. They have an esthetician program. They have a massage program, and all these students got to do their hours. They got to, get some practical experience.
They need guinea pigs.
They need guinea pigs and oink oink.
Yeah.
In the past month, I've gotten 2 massages.
Okay.
I've gotten my haircut. Thanks, Hannah, by the way, if you're listening. Did I think a fantastic job, and will do a great job when she graduates this October. She's going to go to Chapel Hill and work at one of those college salons.
Okay.
And then today I got me a facial.
Oh, yeah.
And man.
So how do you sign up for that? You just go on the website?
That's the part I can't disclose, because if word gets out, oh man, I'm not going to have any spies. It's such a good deal.
Okay.
So all I'm going to say is I'm going to make you guys do the work. Just maybe type in ACC, type in ACC cosmetology or something. I'm not going to do the easy part for you. You got to earn it.
So don't Google how to be a guinea pig.
You got to earn it like I did. Is all I'm saying.
Okay.
And it was fantastic. But anyway, we are tickled pink to have this.
Oh man, today is a very exciting day. We had Jacob Brooks on the pod.
Jacob Brooks.
The Jacob Brooks on. And that was a fantastic episode. And he was like, man, you need to speak to this guy.
Yeah.
And we're like, what guy? And so our guest today, he didn't grow up with silver spoons or stock options. He grew up in the swamps of South Georgia.
Waycross, Georgia, to be exact.
That's right. Where hard work wasn't a slogan. It was survival. Fast forward a few decades, and he built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch. Bet it all on gift cards, and in the 90s, and he won big. But here's the twist. Instead of hoarding his winnings or hiding behind big yachts, Stephen became the vice chair of the Patriotic Millionaires, a group of high net worth folks fighting to make sure the American dream isn't just something you hear about in history class. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be a millionaire or to see a millionaire holler, well, Stephen Prince is your guy. So, Stephen, welcome to the Hometown Holler.
It's great to be here. Great to be here. Great to be back in the great state of North Carolina, where you guys know I graduated from North Carolina State and
Wolfpack.
Put an ex-wife through UNCG. So I've got a lot of North Carolina lineage here. But thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
What brought you up to North Carolina for college?
Ooh, that's a long story. I graduated from high school in 1969. My dad and I built a shopping center in Cherokee, North Carolina.
Okay.
And wound up buying some property there and building a log cabin. And then I met this gal from Bryson City.
Oh,
a
tale as old as time.
It's crazy, guys. I tell you, we met on a day. Let's say it was a Monday. And the first of the month, just so I can stick a stake in the sand.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you.
And about a week or two later, she leaves to go to Greensboro, to go to UNCG. I get on a big van with a bunch of guys, and we drove to Montana for 2 weeks of trout fishing. And while I was out there, I said, she's a girl.
Okay.
She's a girl. And I told this buddy of mine that I was with out there, this older guy, he's about my age now, then. And I told him, I said, I'm going to marry that girl. So we get back to Cherokee, and I worked for him. And I said, Tom, I'm not going back to work, buddy. I'm going to Greensboro. And so I loaded up and drove to Greensboro unannounced. She had no idea I was coming. Showed up at her dormitory in Greensboro, and I said, I've come here to marry you.
Wow.
And 24 hours later, we were married. We got married in High Point, And I went out and got me a job. What did I do first? I think I was
the furniture market.
No, I went to work. I think I went to work for Winn-Dixie first. I did.
That was my first job.
Well, I worked at Winn-Dixie in Waycross, Georgia, where I was from, and so it was kind of natural. And so I went to work for Winn-Dixie, and then the guy that she worked for owned a really cool pizza restaurant on High Point Road in Greensboro, and so I went to work there. Put her through school, and during that time, we're talking about the early 70s, and, you guys don't remember what was going on in the 70s, but I was worried then about the ecological situation developing on the planet. And I decided I was going to go into the forestry business and save the forests of the world. And so when she graduated, we moved to, well, first of all, we drove all the way around the country. We bought a little trailer and a brand new F-150 pickup truck. And we drove one big 14,000-mile circle all the way around the country and wound up in Raleigh. And then I started at North Carolina State. And for 2 weeks, I was delusional and thought that I was going to become a forester until I found out to be a forester, you had to be a scientist. You had to take chemistry and biology and trigonometry.
Use that Biltmore stick.
Yeah. I couldn't do it, didn't I? So I said, well, I've always loved literature. I'm going to get a degree in English. And so I switched majors and graduated in 2.5 years. I got a degree in 2.5 years. I took heavy loads and went all summer long because she was working and putting me through college. And so 2.5 years later, I graduated with a degree in English from North Carolina State, and loved Raleigh, loved North Carolina.
Sure.
But then we moved to moved to Connecticut, and that's where she kind of kicked me to the curb, and I found the greatest woman of my life, who I'm married to for 43 years now.
That's Carol, right?
Yeah, it's Carol. That's right.
That's awesome.
What a story.
Yeah, fantastic.
That was awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's elements of that that are just like a country song. And, and do you feel like I know you live in Georgia and you'll always be a Georgia boy. Do you feel like an honorary Tar Heel a little bit?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I really, it's kind of like being a Democrat or a Republican. I just eschew any labels that call me a Democrat. I'm an American. That is a label that I proudly wear. Fanatically committed to this country, and so I never was a real big volunteer fan, even though I lived in Tennessee for 40 years. I never was a big Carolina or an NC State fan, for that matter, even though I lived here for 7 or 8 years.
All tough teams to be fans of.
Never a big Georgia fan, even though they've won 2 national championships in the last 3 years. Still not a big Georgia fan. I'm a believer in the American experience, and I think as it relates to that particular issue, sports in general, is I've come to the a conclusion that Christianity in the country has weakened dramatically in my lifetime. And the statistics will support that fewer and fewer people call themselves a Christian anymore. Sure. And what have they replaced it with? Sports.
Absolutely.
It's exactly what's happened. So where is every man on Sunday from September all the way till February? They're watching a damn football game. And then in the spring, they're watching baseball and they're watching basketball. And we've replaced religion in our lives with sports. And it's really, but what it does, in my opinion, is that whatever it is, whether it's religion or whether it's sports, it pulls us away from the real issue, and that is humanity.
Yeah,
God, yeah.
Our society in general, and that's just where we are. But how did we go there? I can't remember.
Well, I mean, well, let's linger on it a little bit. So, you feel that there's kind of a bread and circuses vibe, right? That this is maybe some of these like sports, and it's maybe a distraction from things that are more substantive issues. Is that a fair characterization of what you're saying?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, who wins the Super Bowl that means nothing. And other than if you're a fan of that particular team, who wins the Super Bowl or the World Series, that stuff doesn't matter.
I don't know. My pawpaw said
I know.
the Carolina Tar Heels are where it's at, and if you like Duke, you can't be a Ray.
Come live down in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, and you see how fanatical these fans are for UGA. It's amazing how emotionally and spiritually invested people can get in that. I mean, I think probably one of the most telling times for me was I was a Braves fan when they were in Milwaukee. So in 1957, they came to my hometown, Waycross, Georgia, and for 2 years they spring trained in Waycross, Georgia. Then they came to Atlanta. I think it was 1964. I died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
A team that I was a big fan of. So I was a Braves fan when it wasn't cool.
Okay.
So when they went from last to first, and I think it was 97 or 96 to 97.
They had the trifecta of pitchers.
That's right. And one year they played great ball all year, and then they lost the World Series, and that was it.
Yep.
That drew a line in the sand for me. I said, I am not going to emotionally and intellectually and spiritually invest myself in a damn sport team. And then they let me down when I have no control over it, zero control.
But they beat the Yankees in the World
I
Series.
know,
And boy,
I
that
know.
felt good, didn't it?
It did feel good.
Yeah.
It really did. And I probably lose a little bit on the upside because of my lack of investment emotionally and spiritually in the game, but I don't lose as much as everybody does.
I mean,
when
I
they
hear
lose.
what you're putting down. It makes sense if we could all just think that way. I mean, I've been a sports ball guy, but never been a throw a remote at the TV sports ball kind of person.
I mean, this is something I think a lot about personally, and it wouldn't bother me if I felt like it could be a both and. You know, if I felt like Americans, or I'll use this example, right? I think it's fair to say that most North Carolinians probably know more about the starting lineup of the Carolina Panthers than who our congressional delegation is. Right?
Sure.
Isn't that scary?
And it wouldn't bother me except for if it was a both and, if you could do both, but it's a one or the other,
Right.
it seems. You know, and like teaching, and at the start of every year I do this exercise where I tell students, go around the room, tell me your name, and tell me one person you look up to who is not a professional musician or professional athlete. So it has to be somebody from the arts, from the sciences, from politics, from something like that.
Do you get a lot of blank stares?
No, not from the girls. They can name, you name it, Oprah, Michelle Obama, Amelia Earhart, Helen Keller, Marie
That's great.
Curie. Oh, it's fantastic. It's amazing. I mean, and this is without fail. And I'll even tell them, you can name family members. So I'll get grandma, I'll get my mom. I mean, it's the boys. Occasionally you get a Barack Obama.
Sure.
Occasionally you get, I mean, I will allow Olympic athletes. I think that's a different type of athleticism.
Sure.
So you might get a Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt. But man, once you rule out, like, I can't say Aaron Rodgers, or I can't say
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, yeah. And that, as somebody who thinks a lot about our civic fabric, that's concerning. It's kind of sobering.
Everyone should be concerned about it. And that's what we're struggling with right now. Is
Yeah.
the fabric of this nation, the underlying rug that we all live on is getting frayed and worn. And I'm afraid what's going to happen is the holes are going to start appearing. We're going to start falling through. It's just I'm a big metaphor kind of guy, and it just really frightens me that at the end of the day, I think that the problem is the internet and social media in general.
Sure.
That's become the distributive network upon which we are living on, and it's not a good network to live on.
Because it's not real.
No.
I mean, it's not real. So Stephen, you are a patriot. I've read a bunch of stuff that you've written, things you've said. You even have a drip painting of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
So
Cool painting.
you are a super patriot. You are a millionaire. You're a patriotic millionaire. That screams MAGA, right? It seems like when you, in the last, I don't know, since 2016, when people, it feels like the MAGA group has commandeered the word patriot. It feels like the MAGA group has commandeered high net worth folks, right?
Well, I mean, just to use an example, right? Like, we have the America 250 agenda, right? The money agenda. I have the context, having met you and having known Jacob, to know what Patriotic Millionaires is all about. So I know when I open this, I'm going to get some good common sense policies. But just somebody walks by who is unfamiliar with the organization, looks at this.
Definitely looks like something that
They're
would
thinking,
not be on the
Peter Navarro wrote this.
Yes.
Donald Trump Jr. has the foreword in here.
So, and you're not. You've already said you're not a Republican or Democrat. You're an American. That's your fabric. What was the moment or the event that just shifted your thinking about wealth and the responsibility of it? Did something just trigger, or had it been a thing since you were 18?
Well, I mean, I have. If I had to go find a moment, it would be, and this is kind of fragile to say this, but when I was 14 or 15. My father ran the Western Auto Store in Waycross, Georgia. And
what year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
So that would have been 65, 60, not 60.
Okay, that puts context.
And we had a lot of racial stuff going on in the country at the time. And my father was also part of the establishment in our little county. Every county in the South has a sheriff who's in charge of everything, and a judge and a couple of attorneys, that sort of stuff. And the sheriff was one of his best friends. And the sheriff happened to be in my dad's office, standing in his office in the Western Auto Store. You guys probably have never heard of Western Auto, but it was a kind of a miniature department store at the time, because they sold appliances, bicycles, tires, all that sort of stuff. And Sheriff Lee, Robert E. Lee, oddly enough, was his name.
Of course.
He got a call because the office knew where he was. This way pre-cell phones. And he says, Gordon, come with me. Gordon was my dad's name. And right next door was the Greyhound bus station. And so Robert and Daddy ran out the back door of the store, across the parking lot into the Greyhound station, and there was a black guy who refused to get out of the front seat in the bus.
Wow.
He had to sit, all blacks had to sit in the back seat of the bus. And this is a story I have to tell in order to connect it back to me. And so they went in there, and Sheriff Lee told him, says, get out of this bus, get out of this bus. Wouldn't get out. And he grabbed him, and I'm telling this because my father told me this story, grabbed him by the head of his hair and literally pulled him out of the seat, out down the stairs, down onto the pavement, and told his deputies to handcuff him and take him to jail. That's really not what's significant. What's significant as it relates to me is my father came home and told me that story that night, and he was really proud of it. He thought it was very cool that they put this black guy in his place, and they came home and told his 12, 13, 14-year-old boy the thing, and I was going to respond positively to it. What he didn't understand was I was going to respond exactly the opposite of the way he wanted me to respond, that I thought that was so wrong. Why would you do that? Just because he's black, you're going to drag him out of a bus and treat him like an animal? I was astounded, and that's what I did the whole of my formative years. And I don't know what caused it. Maybe it was reading. I don't know, but I never responded to racism like all of my friends did when I was a kid. And that doesn't say that I didn't have some racially charged moments in my life, but it just didn't seem right. The way we treated the African American community in the South in general. So that was a beginning point, and then it slowly evolved over the next 20 or 30 years of my life. And by the time I was 40 or so, I was locked and loaded on fairness and social justice and all the things I'm still very committed to this day.
So, I mean, that's a lot of societal feelings and your moral compass in that. But moreover, like I have family members who will say I am fiscally conservative but socially liberal.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, I got friends of mine tell me that, and then these are all, you got to understand, the vast majority of my friends are wealthy Republicans.
Okay.
90% of them. I mean, I can count on one hand the people who are wealthy the way that I am, who lean left the way that I do. And there, in fact, I had 11 of my buddies down to Sea Island this weekend to play an all last weekend golf, 4 days of golf, and we get into these knockdown dragouts every night over alcohol. And this one friend of mine told me, he says, you know, I wouldn't mind paying more taxes. I just want to make sure they spend it the way I want to. I said, well, buddy, that's not the way government works. It just doesn't work like that. We're going to take care of a lot of things that you, and I asked him, I said, I'll make a deal with you. I think military spending in the United States is out of control. We spend 43% of the world's military budget. There are 190 countries in the world, and the United States spends 43% of the total military budget. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I said, I don't have any better way to express that than the fact that one of the best generals we ever had in modern times was Dwight Eisenhower. And when Dwight was leaving the military in 1958, 59, he said in one of his final speeches, beware the military complex because they have their own agenda. And that may not be a perfect wording of what he said, but that's absolutely the essence of what he said.
That's the spirit, for sure.
And it's absolutely the truth. for people not to realize that military has an agenda, you're incredibly naive. You're living under a rock. And that's what's happened since then. But I told my friend, I said, here's what I'll do. Because I think the amount of money we spend on military is over the moon. It's crazy. But would you agree to spend some money on housing for the poor? Would you agree to provide education for the poor in the inner city? Would you provide health care to the people who can't afford health care, that aren't on Medicare, can't get on Medicare because they're too young? Would you do that? Even though you think they're worthless, shiftless individuals, I still think they need to be taken care of. Would you do that? Because I want to do that. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. You know, it's a typical Judeo-Christian concept of if you're broke and poor and hard up, it's because you just didn't work hard enough.
Right.
You need to buckle up and strap it on and get with it. Well, that's just not the case.
The prosperity gospel.
Yeah. Exactly. So
yeah, it's hard to pull yourself up by the bootstraps when you don't even have boots or straps.
The military spending thing is interesting to me. I mean, so many things do on this podcast go back to the classroom for me, and like I've routinely when we talk about the federal budget, I've given high school students a pie chart, a blank pie chart, and I just say these are the 15 departments that you have got to allocate this amount of percentage, right? It's all got to add up to 100. How do you allocate it? I go over kind of what each department does. I've never, and I've had hundreds of students do this. I've never had a student come back with the allocation remotely close
to what it is.
And they are all, some students will get really, they think that they are just being real warmongers, and they'll put our military funding at 25% or something like that. And then when I show it to them, minds are blown. And, and I tell them, look, we have the largest Air Force in the world. That's the U.S. Air Force. The second largest Air Force is the U.S. Navy. It is talk about a religious experience. For some of these students, it is, because it's so counter to everything we expect from a government.
To reality.
And to reality. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, when I think it was after Trump's first presidency, when he did his tax cuts and the Jobs Act, I was reading a Guardian article. I think you might have wrote that one. But you're in there saying that, you got like 2 or 3 million from the Trump tax cut and the Jobs Act that you didn't ask for, you didn't need. And so you see money moving behind these scenes in high net worth businesses and business folks. Why do you think this trickle down stuff has such a grip on folks still? Because when you got that money that you said you didn't ask for, you didn't need, but why are the 90% of your friends being like, yeah, if you give me more money, I'm going to trickle it down? What's
the disconnect there?
Yeah, what's the disconnect?
Yeah, because you seem to get something that is, maybe to us is kind of hidden in plain sight. What's going on there for the folks who are just driving right past it?
Well, we got into a big discussion this weekend with my 10. One's another left-leaner like me, but the other 10 feel the way that the Trumpians do.
We got to have them on the podcast. Other 10.
Yeah. In fact, Erica, our founder and our CEO, wanted me to have dialogue with them about that. And I said, that's dialogue we have all the time. But what's driving those guys is it's pretty simple. It's greed. That's really all, and it's not complex. And we're all greedy. You are, both of you are, I am, we all are.
Is it financial greed or power greed?
Oh, I think
it's all of the above.
The vast majority of it is financial greed. You have to get way up the food chain for it to become power greed, for you to look around and realize, I could write $1 million check. That changes heads. To write a $10,000 check, that doesn't really move a whole lot. Even on a state level, it doesn't have a whole lot of impact. Look, Elon spent $256 billion. $256 billion. Now, guys, that's a big number. The vast majority of people in America cannot get their mind. It's like 97 million miles of the moon.
Right. I can't fathom that.
Yeah. How can anybody?
At a certain point, numbers are just numbers, right? And
there's a story. There's actually a defining note, and it's 32, 32, and 32. 1 million seconds is 32 days. Okay. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. That's it. 1 billion seconds, 32 years. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years.
Wow.
That's the differentiator in those numbers. Humanity can't get their mind around that. It's too big. And we've got a $36 trillion deficit that is hanging over this country right now. And whether the Republicans want to recognize it or not, whether anybody, you can use modern money theory, you can use whatever you want to. But one day, and I predict there will be a tipping point. One day, China or France or Germany or whoever is going to, when we're having a bond sale on the 3rd of the month or whenever they hold bond sales, and they say we need to sell $1 trillion or $500 billion worth of bonds today, they're going to say, you know what? I'm worried about where you guys are going. I don't think I'm going to buy any. So the price is going to go up because you have to raise the price and the value of them, the return on them, so people will buy them because we got to sell them because we got to fund the deficit. And when we have that day, it will be a dark day. It'll be Black Friday in 1929, and it will unequivocally happen if we don't do something about fixing the deficit spending that we're experiencing in this country. Look at Elon. Elon says, like he always does, I'll have a brand new Tesla. What was the one he came out when he says it's going to be ready 2 years before it really was, and the same with he was going to reduce the deficit spending $2 trillion.
Right,
that's a big number.
Yeah.
I just heard this morning on NPR that what he's really reduced it so far is $150 billion.
Yeah,
that's not even provable. That's not even provable. But he says it's 150.
But doesn't the debt doesn't really matter?
It matters a lot because it's real debt. It's real debt. It's not made up.
Yeah, but
it's real debt.
Isn't it just such a large number that it is just unquantifiable to ever obtain to be at zero?
Well, I don't think the goal is ever for it to be at zero because, I mean, and look, this is an obvious disclaimer. I'm not an economist, right? I have played one on TV. No. My sense is that, a common misconception is that national debt is like household debt. And that's not true. It's different.
Yeah, household debt dies.
But
US
that's
debt
not
never
to
dies.
say that federal debt is insignificant or is without consequences.
Well, you know what you know about the modern money theory, the MMT. That's a whole new concept right now. And they're saying that debt doesn't matter.
Right. It's just about the supply, circulation.
Exactly. That's exactly right. All we need to do is print more money. And we can do that. We actually can do that until we can't. And there will come a day. It's really not unlike, in my view, the climate. And that I think there's a tipping point approaching in the climate.
Not a matter of if, a matter of when.
People don't even understand. I mean, think about. Have you guys ever thought about ice caps on the North and the South Pole, and that they're white, and that if they get progressively smaller, what they're exposing a dark ocean, and so that space. And it may be small. It may be the size of this table initially. Then it may grow to the size of your town. Then it could grow to the size of North Carolina. When it does, it's doing two things. One, it's putting more water into the oceans. Not a good thing. Yeah. If you live on the ocean the way that I do.
We got the Outer Banks here. We got Ocracoke Island.
Right. But the second thing, more important, the exponential component that really changes everything, is all that space no longer is reflecting the sunlight back into the atmosphere. It's absorbing the heat because now it's dark. Now it's an ocean, and so it's absorbing that heat, again driving up the heat of the ocean. So one day, the North and the South Poles could lose enough snow or white surface to where we're really boiling up a component of the oceans of the planet that had never gotten hot before. And it's going to be catastrophic. And the thing that so pisses me off about it.
Tell it now.
It's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect me. I got money. I can get in a jet and I can fly anywhere on the planet. And I can take all my family. I talked to my oldest daughter the other day. I said, honey, she's freaking out. She lives in Hawaii. She said, Papa, what are we going to do? This is really getting bad. I said, well, honey, the bad thing about it is, I can load all of you up and we can fly anywhere on the planet and we can go buy a place and we can go live there and spend the rest of our lives. But I just can't forsake the concerns and the legitimate needs of all of my fellow mankind. I just can't do that. And that's where we are. It's horrible.
When I think about these issues, climate, right, the environment, when I think about tax reform, I think so many times folks on our side of the political spectrum, and I will just say, when I say our side, I mean anything to the left of MAGA, I mean anything that's not. I don't mean progressive. I don't mean centrist. I just mean anybody who's not in the Donald Trump cinematic universe.
Okay.
Right. These issues are so often approached like it's jawboning. It's moralizing, right? We got to save the polar bears. We have to do something because it is morally the right thing to do. I think one way that, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Stephen, one way that I wonder if we could just try approaching it from the standpoint of appealing to people's greed.
There's just no there's no downside to doing the right thing. There really isn't. Well, so 77 million people voted for Trump in the last election. 77 million. 7 million of them did it for greed.
Right.
They did it because he wanted the same things that they did. And that was people that are in my income and financial situation. The other 70 million, they should have voted for whoever was running on the other side, whether it's Kamala or Joe or whoever it was on the other side. That's who they should have voted for. Because the people that believe in Trump and believe in whoever's running for that side want one thing. They want economic security and protection for themselves, whether that's in the form of tax policy or political policy. That's what they're concerned about. To me, I've come up with this new phrase. You're either a me person or you're a we person. Most people on the left are we people. We care about everybody, no matter what your religion is, what your sexual orientation is, what your skin color is. We care about everyone. Whereas the people on the me side, they really care about me, even if what they're asking for doesn't take care of me. Even in the 70 million of that 77 million, they're asking for policies that won't be in their favor. They really won't.
Well, on the topic of policies, right? So Patriotic Millionaires has a lot of policy recommendations. I mean, y'all have a whole agenda. You got America 250. You got the money agenda right there on the table.
Right.
Could we talk a little bit about some of the ideas y'all are bringing to the table and what those ideas could do for our nation, for our country?
Sure. The base foundation of the 250 concept is, first of all, it's our 250th anniversary in 2 years, 2026. We have been pushing for a minimum wage for 4 or 5 years and getting nowhere. I went to Lamar Alexander, who was a senator from Tennessee, and I went to his office one day because he made a comment that he thought we should not have any minimum wage at all, zero, that we should let the market settle that discussion.
That sounds like our Commissioner of Labor here.
It does. That's a Luke Farley quote. Yeah.
And I never he wouldn't see me, and he wasn't the day that I went to his office. He wouldn't see me when I went to Washington either. But my counter to that is so. I'm a successful business guy. You know, I've got 60 employees, and I run a very successful business, making a lot of money. And so you got a 19-year-old boy or girl, young man or young woman come in, and they want to get a job feeding one of my presses or working on one of our encoding devices, because I was in a gift card business. And I said, so who's gonna win that verbal battle if I'm negotiating with you over salary? This 19, 20-year-old young person that maybe this is their first or second job, or a 60-year-old guy that's been in business for a long, long time, and I'm negotiating with them, I'm going to pay you $10 an hour or $9 an hour. Who's going to win? I'm going to win.
Yeah, there's a real power differential there.
Without a doubt.
Without,
and I think that it's incredibly naive to think that there isn't, and to think that business owners aren't driven by greed is amazingly naive and wrong-headed.
So what's the argument, though, if you have a mandatory minimum wage, pick whatever number you want to pick, but if it's higher than what it currently is, isn't that going to drive prices up? And isn't that going to just even out the waters?
So in 1973, the income money that was distributed in America from the richest person to the poorest person, 9% went to the top 1%. 9%, less than a dime. Last year, that same 1% got 26%. So what we've done is we've taken all the distributed payments, and whether it's a salary, whether it's capital gains, whatever it is, 26%, more than a quarter, went to the top 1%.
Yeah.
Just 1%. That's only 3.5 million people. And everybody else got what was left over. And so we're distributing the wealth because of tax policy.
Yeah.
I mean, like capital gains. What is capital gains? Most people don't even know what capital gains is because they're not in the capital gains earning environment. But capital gains is another way to not have to pay taxes. What is inheritance tax? What is that? It's another term for wealthy people to not have to pay taxes. And they come up with all these terms, and they call it, pejoratively, they call it the death tax. So they can wrap that ugly shroud around it. But at the end of the day, all it comes down is a way for wealthy people to not pay taxes.
Or buy a lot of life insurance policies.
Let me tell you something. One of the fastest growing job types in the United States is wealth management. I use Morgan Stanley. They're my wealth management company. And the guy that handles my money, he makes a lot of money. Making a lot of money, and all he's doing is managing the money of other people, a lot of which are friends of mine that I turned on to him. People don't understand the whole game is rigged for we wealthy people. At the end of the day, that's it. I read a book last year that everybody that's concerned about this issue needs to read, and it's called The Wolf on K Street. And it's about the beginning of a new organization in Washington, in Washington D.C. that began the real explosion of lobbyists. And what they came to realize is they got the first law passed in D.C. which reduced taxes. 1973 was the first year it happened. Because up until 1973, the effective tax rate in the United States, and this blows most people away, wasn't. Do you guys have any idea what the highest tax rate?
90%.
It's been a while since I've seen I saw a Robert Reich documentary where he talked about this. I think
91.
It was like 91. Okay, yeah.
91%.
I would say 92. I would have thought, yeah.
Now, what people don't understand though is it's not 91% on all of it.
Right.
It was 37% on the first X, 42% on
progressive.
Exactly. It's a progressive
and
tax.
then it also lets you feed back into your business. If you took that money you gained and gave higher wages, right, you could write those off, have tax incentives instead of just hoarding your money and putting it, in an offshore account. Instead of getting that gross profit, it gave you incentive to do your business.
Or charitable contributions.
But
right?
isn't that what trickle down just screwed everything when Reagan came in, right? Because he's like, we'll give you more money, you get to do what you want with it, but it cut the tax to that upper epsilon down to what, 27? No.
Well, we're at 39 now, but capital gains has been reduced down to 21%, and they want to drop it to 15, which I think is just unadulterated bullshit. It's just not right. I mean, but because who makes the money that way? We wealthy people.
Yeah.
We're the only ones that buy big buildings and start new companies and invest in things.
Who pays a capital gains tax, right? Exactly.
Right, that's right. It's just not right. I mean, but what it is if you're rich. It's perfect if you're rich.
It feels good if you're rich.
But the thing that I always tell all my wealthy people, say, look, but if we went back to 1972, well, let's go to the 60s. So in the 60s, the effective tax rate in the 60s was 91%, all the way up to the top. If you made a bunch of money, you paid up to 91%. We fought the Vietnam War, which is one of the most expensive wars we've ever fought. We went to the moon. We put together a program to go to the moon, and we built the interstate highway system.
Yep.
If we had to do any of those major moonshot kind of things today, we would, A, never get it done because we'd never get the Congress to agree to do it.
That's right.
And B, we wouldn't spend the tax money to do so. And all the while, all through the 60s, people still got rich. They still had multiple homes. They still had 2 or 3 cars. They still put the kids through college. What's happened is we created the system to where we wealthy people just get to keep it. We get to keep it, and we can pile it up. I mean, why does a person need to be worth $325 billion a year?
I don't know.
There's no sanity in that. It makes no sense whatsoever.
But isn't worth different than cash on hand?
Well, absolutely, and you're a very unusual person to ask that question. Most people don't understand that, without a doubt, but still. Well, I mean, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example. He has a $450 million yacht. $450 million. And it was so big it couldn't go into most of the marinas around the world, and so we had to build a $250 million chase yacht.
As Stephen Prince would say, that is unadulterated bullshit.
It is. So $700 million worth of boats. So my sister and I bought a 25-foot center console fishing boat 4 or 5 years ago.
Sure.
Paid $72,000 for it. We split it, $36,000 a piece. And after 2 years of owning it, we thought this is not fun, and we don't like it. Every time we took it out, we grounded. It just didn't work.
Sounds like a former boat owner.
But how do you think we paid where do you think that $72,000 came from? Post-tax dollars. How much money do you think Jeff Bezos paid for the $700 million that he put together to buy those 2 boats? Zero.
Against stock or something.
He went out and borrowed money against his Amazon stock, came up with the $700 million, bought those 2 boats, and never paid any taxes. And the money that he borrowed, he wrote the interest off even on that. It's bullshit, guys. Let me tell you something. America doesn't understand that the country's tax policy is built for we wealthy people. They're delusional. They don't understand. And I don't blame them. I mean, look, they got to go to work every day. They got to change tires. They got to cut meat. They got to drive nails. They got to do whatever they do. They don't have time to get focused on this sort of stuff. So when somebody comes along and sells them a bill of goods about how we need to do this with tax policy or that with tax policy, they don't. It's deep stuff, and I don't blame them for that.
I also think part of it is, and I bought into this. I mean, growing up as a kid, there is a kernel of truth in a lot of the mythology of this nation. We are. I would say we are the best country. I mean, I'm so proud.
Without a doubt, I love this country. I really love.
Thank you.
This to the bottom of my heart. I love this country.
Absolutely,
best country in the history of mankind.
Absolutely, in terms of our accomplishments, in terms of our aspirational values. If you look at human history, we are the most successful experiment to date, and we should be proud of that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so appreciative of your organization, because patriotism is a virtue. And it is something that it is a winning virtue, and we should all be rallying around it. But
so, the agenda. Would you still want to go on the agenda?
Well, I guess what I was going to say is, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Sorry,
well, let me jump in because I did not finish that.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple concept, and that is what we say is that since we didn't do the minimum wage, we haven't done the minimum wage, let's go a different approach, and let's come up with a livable salary. If we raise it to $20 an hour, which we'll never, the only thing we've ever heard enough appetite in Congress, in both houses of Congress, is $15. It's not enough. It's $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
So $20 a year is $40,000. What we're proposing is that let's make the minimum income, not the wage, the minimum income to be a truly living wage, which right now is $40,600, and that people who make $40,600 pay no taxes, zero taxes. How do we make that tax income up? We put a surcharge on people who make $1 million a year. So we're going to charge 3% on everything over $1 million a year to those people. And when you get to 10 million, it's 8%. 8% on everything over 10 million. It ought to be more than that as far as I'm concerned. And let me just...
Would you still be rich, though?
Hell yes. Without a doubt.
So how do you convince people who think this is a punishment for being rich and thinking that you're not going to be rich? If you tax me more, I'm not going to be as rich.
So this ties into the question I was going to get to, which is that I think you're going to have a hell of a time selling that to your golf buddies, but you don't need to sell it to your golf buddies, because proportionally in terms of the voting electorate,
they're only 7 million.
I mean, they're not the majority. They're pretty far from it, right? Going back to what I was saying about kind of the there are certain kernels of truth in American mythology. I do believe we are the best country. I believe that there are so many things we should be proud of. I do believe the American dream is not a myth. I do think we are. There's a reason people come here for opportunity. Now, that being said, I do think there are a lot of folks who believe that, obviously it is in nobody's best interest who is not a member of the top 1% to support some of these. It is in the interest of folks who are now the top 1% to support some of these policies, but they won't do it because there's a belief that we're all temporarily embarrassed billionaires, as the saying goes. That one day, I don't want to support the tax on the rich now because one day I'm going to be rich, and when my ship comes in, I'm not going to want to have to. I may not be there now, but
I'm going to protect
when I
it
win the
when I get
lottery,
there.
when I make it big and move to Vegas. And the question I'm always coming back to, the perennial question for me is how to reach folks, because people, and I don't like it to be told to me that, oh, you're voting against your interests. Because to me, I think, well, I know what my interests are. Don't tell me I'm voting against my interest as an American, as a Southerner, as whoever it is. So this is a riddle. I don't have the answer to it.
Yes.
And I'm just curious to hear how you think we could win over or persuade folks who would benefit the most from these policies.
Yeah, what's your message to that working class conservative who's been told their best shot is to protect the rich and fight for those crumbs?
Well, I would draw a sporting corollary, and that is that how many kids that are boys primarily that are in the 9th or the 10th grade and they throw a really good fastball.
Oh man, they all want to be in that MLB. Yeah.
They broke through the line and they ran for a touchdown. And they shot the mid-court shot, 3-point shot, the one, and they think, I'm going to go to MLB, I'm going to go to NFL. And what percentage of them do? Very, 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 very small.
Yeah.
It's minuscule. It's tiny. The same is true of being that wealthy. The odds are stacked against you that you're ever going to be voting for policy that will afford you an opportunity. If you do make it rich, I mean, only 3.5 million of us that live in 1%. 3.5 million of us, and that's a big number.
Yeah.
But not compared to 350 million. It's 1%.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what you have to do. You have to explain to them that your chances of being middle class are infinitely greater of your ever being not just the 10%, which is still upper class, but the 1%, which is super upper class. It's hard, but it's, it's kind of the American thing. I mean, I'd kind of draw it back to one thing that I run into all the time, because I have these discussions with all my wealthy buddies.
Sure.
And I tell them that we need to be paying more taxes. They said, well, Stephen, why don't you just write a bigger check? I said, because I want to fix a problem. If I took every dollar that my children are going to inherit, 100% of it, and I've told all 3 of my children, if I could write a check for everything you're going to inherit when I die, and it would fix the problems in America, you're not going to inherit anything. I'll take it every bit of it away from you, because America matters more than you, my own children. Now, there aren't many parents who will say that.
No.
Most parents won't say that, but America matters more than my own children. And I love my children as much as a father with any degree of sanity can. I love my children immensely.
But there would be an argument there, I guess, because your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, right? Like if America's not taken care of, then that your children and great-grandchildren and children or grandchildren are not going to be taken care of. But let's linger on that too, because I think you've said before that charity just won't cut it. I'm sure you've talked with a bunch of your friends and talked about, well, why don't you just write a check and do all these houses and put houses up for folks? Charity's not going to give us a way out, and you're talking about that. We need guardrails. Kind of, you've equated it to like speeding and traffic tickets.
Systemic problems require systemic solutions, right?
So
good point.
Why does this fix have to be policy and can't be relied on the 1% charity?
I had a really good friend of mine that was an Indian guy. We went to India one time. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip, and he and I did some businesses together, and I lost a lot of money with him, but he was
it was a good time.
still a good guy. Still a good guy.
We remember it fondly.
And he said to me one time, and I don't know anything that tells us any better. He said, Stephen, I wish everybody in America would give me a penny a day.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
a horrible Indian accent. I know it is. My wife.
Was that what it was, Stephen?
Right?
My wife gives me a hard time.
You should hear my Irish man. That was pretty good, honestly.
I don't do accents real well, but it dawned on me the scale of numbers. What happens when you start doing that, and that's what happens when you make a change systemically across the country. It's a big change, and it mounts up to a lot of money, and we need a lot of money.
Yeah.
My whatever my worth is, and it's a pretty big number, but it's chump change in terms of the size of the problem.
Sure.
But even if we got Elon and Jeff and Mark, And who else would be next? And Warren.
Yeah, let's get Warren in there.
If we throw Warren in there, you're talking about, maybe $1.2 trillion, $1.3 trillion altogether.
Ain't touching shit.
No, we're getting nothing done because we've been doing it since 1973. The only year we've had a positive budgetary process was when Clinton was in office, and only then 2 years. When you lose money every year, I've got this new thing that I've just come up with lately.
Oh, I thought you said right now on the spot.
And everybody says, and it's only been the last 2 weeks. Everybody says because of what Trump's doing. Don't you love the fact that he's getting rid of waste, he's getting rid of fraud, he's doing all this? Yeah, I like that. I think that's good, but that's not going to fix the problem. Right. Yeah, I think getting rid of waste and fraud is good. And so I was thinking, I almost lost my thought. It's wandering here. I lost it. I'll come back to it.
Hey, you're good. I lost my thought a couple minutes ago myself. So.
We do tend to wander sometimes.
Yeah.
It happens. So
that's the sign of a good conversation, in my personal opinion.
when you just go off track and find the fork in the road and go. So we talked about I think there's 4 main points in Agenda 250. Cost of Living Tax Cut Act, right? That's the big one. That's where everybody gets that $40,000.
I'm impressed, Quinn. You know the structure of it better than I do. So go ahead.
And then you have raising tax on the wealthy, which Correct. You kind of spoke on. We have raising minimum wage. But the other thing that was really interesting
to me, this is the biggest one.
Yeah, is ending political corruption, mainly with campaign finances. We want to get, I think Citizens United, we all can say is just kind of, terrible. I mean, just look what Elon did in Wisconsin.
You caught yourself there. That was good. Yeah, I saw you. Yeah, you're right. No, Citizens United didn't do great things for transparency, for democracy.
Horrible.
Yeah. So can you just walk us through just the agenda itself? Because 26 is coming next year. We're getting ready. America's going to celebrate its 250th birthday. There seems like there's a lot of emphasis on we need to do this before 26. There's a lot of urgency involved. So can you just connect why those 4 main points are so urgent right now for America, for us to succeed? Because through this whole conversation, you came across as like, this isn't just a maybe. America, it's a matter of when.
It's an imperative. Right. This is the stakes are high.
So what's why did the Patriotic Millionaires pick these to be, this is how we're going to solve?
Well, the minimum wage, we don't use minimum wage anymore because we're going to just a salary itself that is supportable. But I think the one that's the most impactful that people probably emphasize the least, which I think is the most important, and that is the power that money has developed in the country.
Amen.
For people to not realize how much power money has exerted, and you go back to the Koch brothers.
Sure.
And I was talking to Jacob about this on the way over. The Koch brothers, I think it was maybe 10 years ago, they put up $785 million to drive elections throughout the nation. And they drilled down. They just weren't focusing on national elections. They were looking on a state level, judgeships, but local Congress people, governors. They realized that if they could throw that money at those institutions or those opportunities, they could begin to infect the fabric of the United States because they had one goal. It's all about the money. Don't ever be delusional to think it's about anything about whether it's prison reform, immigration reform, LGBTQ, and it's not any of that. It's money. It's really all it comes down to for the top 10%, and most especially
money and racism,
the top 1%.
Right?
Well,
even racism is money.
Yeah,
there's money in that.
But racism is very quiet. We white people in the South, we fight being racist as hard as we possibly can.
Sure.
It's hard to accept the fact that we are. Now, I'll go a little bit off track here.
Cheers to you there, Stephen.
I'm of the opinion that we're all racially aware. Being racially aware, being aware of the fact that somebody sitting in the room has black skin or brown skin or yellow skin or white skin, that's normal. PJ told me one time after we went to India, and everywhere we went, people wanted to come take my picture. And I was fascinated by that. That no matter, I didn't look like anybody famous.
Well, you're the credit card or the
well,
gift
they
card
didn't
guy.
know that. They didn't know that though.
Okay.
I just had white skin.
Okay.
And they would come running to take my picture. And he said, "Stephen, everybody in the planet is racist. Now, that's a negative term, but he really meant racially aware.
Right.
And we were going into the hinterlands.
You were a
India.
novelty.
Exactly. That's right. I was interesting to them. Wow. But we all are. We're all aware of that. It's how that manifests itself in our exterior presentation.
And the value we assign to it, the
That's
judgments
exactly
we
right.
make as a result.
And the thing that so astounds me, the people that don't want to recognize that they make decisions based on that.
Sure.
That they make decisions based on skin color. But but the power in politics is what's happening with money in America. These people, I mean, I spent a lot of money on elections last year, a lot. And left very frustrated because the election did not go at all the way that I wanted it to.
Can I ask you, how'd you spend that money on?
In terms of like PACs or individual?
Yeah, like what was it? Was it individual candidates? Because there's a cap on that.
Individual candidates.
Okay.
I maxed out on a lot of candidates.
Okay.
But just giving a lot of money to candidates.
Which I teach civics, and my students are always surprised to find that like the cap, like, it's not that high. It's like 6,400, I believe.
Now it is here in North Carolina.
North Carolina, at least.
Right,
so
right.
I mean, it's when people hear, so folks who are new to the holler and folks who may be new to politics in general, when you hear about vast sums of money, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on politics, that is not Elon Musk giving directly to a candidate. That is through a PAC. That is through some kind of, I would say, nefarious means. A question I have for you is, we're in 2025, obviously. Let's play Monday morning quarterback a little bit. What do you think, if anything, could have made a difference in the outcome of
Zero?
Okay, I agree. I actually agree with you.
Zero.
I agree with you. Okay, I'm refreshing to hear you
And
say
that's my
that.
frustration with it, but zero.
Yeah, okay. I agree with you. I think, personal opinion, I think Kamala Harris ran a hell of a campaign, and I was very excited to see folks at the DNC chanting USA. I thought it was a refreshing period of American politics that we badly needed, and I hope we will continue in that direction. I think the fundamentals were very much against her, and I think there were. I mean, you've said it, Quinn. She was handed a poison chalice.
Yeah.
And I think that it would have been. It was. I'll put it this way. It was Donald Trump's race to lose. Yeah, I'll put it that way. Yeah.
It's the problem that the Democrats have, and realize that I'm not a Democrat,
Sure.
and I'm not, and I said this earlier, and I'm not a Republican, I'm an American, is that the Democrats are really splintered.
Yeah.
They have all these different factions internally.
There's a Will Rogers quote.
Rogers
not Roy Rogers. It was Will Rogers.
I like
who
your
said,
hamburgers.
Well, Will Rogers, who's the humorist, said, "I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat."
I didn't remember that one. Yeah.
So
I don't know how you get over that. I really don't. I mean, because we have at least 6 or 7 and probably 10 or 12 factions.
Yeah.
And it's very. I mean, because we were
Big
just
tent.
when we had our annual event in April, early April in Washington D.C. I visited 6 Senate offices in one day.
Wow.
And some of them just said, this is frustrating.
Yeah.
We really don't know what bullet to shoot because it's a mess up here right now, and it is. It's truly a mess.
so many groups want
And
you
that's
to
right.
say the
the Palestinians against the Israelis.
Right.
The interventionists versus the stay-outers, and it's a mess.
Well, wouldn't it just be? I mean, I think this is making it too simplistic, but just a little bit of authenticity would be. Well, hey, Jacob.
Y'all don't mind me. I just needed to.
You're freshening up that glass.
Nobody's minding you right there. We do appreciate that.
Welcome back on the
Scotch.
show, by
Do you
the
have
way.
any more ice over there? Is there any ice in one of those cups? I don't. How much longer do we have?
We're getting ready to land the
getting-
plane here.
But I want to talk about AI for a second.
Yes, let's hit AI.
Have at it.
And by the way, I just want to say thank you so much for being so generous
Sure.
with your time and coming on the holler. This has been delightful.
Well,
Oh, he is.
so talking about AI brings me back to a whole lot of different issues.
Yeah.
And that is AI is unequivocally going to replace a lot of jobs on the planet.
Not A1.
No, not AI. And what we have to do is we as a society have to come to terms with the impact of that. We were talking earlier about housing, about building houses.
Yeah.
We have a 4 million house deficit in the United States. We need 4 million houses more than we have. Trump wants to bring all these jobs into the country. Our unemployment when he came into the office is 4.1%. which means the vast majority of America that wants a job has a job.
Right.
And if we're not bringing other workers in from outside of the country, we're screwed. The nation is screwed. We've got to bring these people into the country. AI is going to exacerbate that problem because in the opposite way, it's going to replace a lot of people that work at McDonald's, at Sears, or at Amazon. Amazon. My son works at Amazon.
It's going to replace high net worth jobs in the sense of
Exactly.
people, engineers.
That's right.
Computer code programmers.
That's right.
AI is going to do, and those are 6-figure salaries.
So you know what we got to do?
What's that?
We got to come to grips with what are we going to do about a universal basic income. If we don't come up with a way, and even Elon Trump has said this, we've got to come to grips with what we're going to do with people who can't get a job because there isn't a job that fits their skill set. And we have got to get comfortable paying somebody $40,000, $50,000 a year to stay home and watch Jeopardy.
Yeah.
To do whatever it is
Which
that
is
they
a
want to
great
do.
show.
Well,
I love
we,
Jeopardy.
and we
do
shouldn't
too. I
force
do too.
people to have to sit in a hot sweat plant.
That's
you know,
right.
making Nikes.
That's right.
Not
That's
that we
right.
should pay other people and children to do
Guys,
sweatshops.
there's enough money to go around. There's enough money to go around if we'd stop letting so much of it pile up in so few pockets. There's enough money to go around. Corporations have got. I want to make this one point, and that is that when I ran a company for 30 plus years, I had 2 points that I focused on all the time: expenses and revenue.
Yeah.
Expenses and revenue.
PL.
Top line, and what my cost is. And I could affect cost pretty easily. I could lay people off. I could pay them lower salaries. I could buy more efficient equipment. I could do a lot of things to reduce my costs. But I also had to get out and sell more. Had to get out and get more business.
Yeah.
And everybody says they want the government to be run like a business. Well, then why is it that the government can't want the same thing to raise revenue, which is what?
Taxes.
Taxes. Why
That's
is it?
a brilliant point. I'm going to use that.
Why is it that everybody in Washington, all they're talking about is cutting overhead, which is expenses? Why don't we just raise revenue? Why don't we just increase taxes in any form? I'm not a big tariff fan. I think tariffs is a horrible thing for us to foist upon the country and a relationship with the world. But why don't we increase taxes on corporations and individuals? Remember what I said a while ago. In 1973, the top 1% took home 9 cents of every dollar.
Now it's 26.
Now they take home $26. Where do you think that money's coming from? It's coming from their employees.
Yep.
It's coming from everybody else that could be getting it. Could they still have a yacht? Could they still have 3 homes? Could they still have a jet?
You tell me.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Well, I know these are big problems, but I do think in the course of this conversation, I personally have arrived at what I think is a silver bullet solution, and I don't think we're that far
Oh
away from
boy,
it.
what you got?
We clone this guy.
We have some more
Wouldn't
Stevens
be-
everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine?
Yes, I could.
Yeah.
Scotch drinking,
Oh, dude.
sailor
Be a
mouth
different
talking.
world. We would be a proper country
businessman.
again.
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
Wouldn't
we
take
would.
long. Wouldn't take long.
So we got to land this
Yeah.
plane. I got one more question for you, Daniel. You might have something else for him, but Stephen, what do you say to this next generation that is just staring at a world that just feels unequal than ever before here in America? What do you tell these folks? Because in a lot of your interviews that you've been in, you're like, I'm not going to be around, you know, I'm going to die with money, right? It's just, that's where it is. It's people after me. Who do you tell Daniel and I and Jacob, this next generation coming after you, or better yet, your grandchildren? What do you tell them? How do you make sure that hope is still there, or are you just going to give them the pessimistic things like, you're fucked, kid?
Well, none of my kids are fucked. I mean, my kids, they're going to be okay. But they all have the same mindset that I am, and that is you just have to recognize the fact that you can't just focus on yourself. If you don't focus on the larger scene, your community, your state, your nation, if the decisions that you're making are not centered on the larger population, no matter how big that may be, but larger than just me.
Sure.
If you can't get a little bit of we in there, you're probably not making a good decision. If our society was the way it was in the 50s and the 60s, that's one thing I tell my friends all the time. our parents, the greatest civilization, the greatest generation of all time, the parents who fought World War II, they left us a really great country. And they began to turn it. They were beginning to make some pretty good money in the 60s and the early 70s. And then we started reducing taxes. Greed began to kick in. And by the time they turned it over to us in probably the mid 80s when Reagan was in charge and we went into full all-out greed mode, it began to go downhill, and it's gone down fast ever since. But and if we could just get back on the time when we took care of everybody, we worried about the hungry, we worried about the homeless. We have 650,000 people in this country that sleep under a bridge every night.
Yeah, that's tough.
And we've got enough money to take care of them. So we just got to have to think about just ourselves. We can't just think about ourselves.
You know, I really appreciate your answer to that, because I've asked other successful business folks and people, and, you know, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you go to the mirror, there's a mantra written above the mirror, make sure you run 2 miles, and then
live, laugh, love.
Do your devotional, write in your journal, grind.
Good for you.
And then you'll make that money, and then you'll be okay. And so coming from a different perspective of the we instead of me, especially coming from somebody who has experienced success is very refreshing, and I really appreciate that.
No, I mean, I don't. You know, you mentioned if I had any other questions. I think this was the question I would have asked, honestly, and I think you answered it beautifully. I mean, I think we're humans, just fundamentally, we're social creatures. Human solidarity is the key to all of this, and at the end of the day, we keep what we give, and this has been just a delightful conversation.
Well, you got to work yourself out of the cocoon of selfishness. That's what you have to do, and I think paying it forward is incredibly powerful. Yeah, I just do. But you guys are doing a great job. I'm really impressed.
Yeah,
with
how
what
do we
you're
get
doing.
you back on the show?
Well, I mean, you come down to St. Simon's, and we can do this down there.
We can do
that.
that.
Be cool.
Yeah. Right on the beach.
Oh man, be careful what you offer, Stephen. Like I said, I'll make it down to Savannah every now and then, and St. Simon's is not that far.
It's only 70 miles further south.
Not that far,
Yeah.
so we might have to take you up on that. But folks, please, if you haven't already, go check out the Patriotic Millionaires. It's an organization we as a society need so badly right now. They are boldly, unabashedly patriotic. They understand what this country is about. And go check them out. You'll be better for it. We'll all be better for it. And of course, thanks for listening to the Hometown Holler. This has been a lot of fun, Quinn.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And if you haven't already followed us on Substack, go check that out. Daniel put out an awesome column. He's been putting stuff out. We got our senior editor Milo Baines putting out columns. Dude,
shout
on
out
Wednesday.
to Milo.
He's doing good stuff. And lastly, if you haven't followed us on Patreon, please do that.
Add that to your to-do list.
We need help keeping these lights on, and you guys that are listening are the ones that are helping us do that. And Stephen, thanks for coming to the holler. Oh, I think we got a gift. Yes.
So Stephen, we got a gift for you. Every person who comes on the Hometown Holler gets a special gift from our friends at TS Designs. So they're in Alamance County. They are our region's premier apparel company. And what I mean by that is, most T-shirts go about 13,000 miles-ish on the supply chain. Their shirts are about 600 miles. It's a North Carolina, South Carolina supply chain. Fair trade from dirt to shirt, as we say. And their shirts you feel good in and you feel good about. And we are blessed to be able to offer one to every special guest, yourself included. So before you leave here today, we'll get a selfie with you in that TS Design shirt. And Quinn, I think that's all the news that's fit.
That's it, Daniel. Okay. Thanks again, Stephen.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, guys.
Yep.